everybody to the production channel.
Chatter.
What up, Clem? How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing wonderful, man. You?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm actually out here this week in Houston, Texas. Actually, I started in Dallas, then I went to San Antonio, and now I'm in Houston, Texas. So I'm traveling all week this week.
Man, you got to hit up Austin next.
Actually, I'm flying out of Austin.
See, there you go.
Be there for like a little bit. But literally, out of all of those cities, Austin is the one I want to spend the longest amount of time.
And I have still yet to go there. I'm excited though.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, cool. Well, I'm excited today. We've got a really special guest today, Judie Kavanagh. Welcome, Judie.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Judie is a stage manager out of Toronto, Canada. She's actually been working in the events industry and sort of corporate events industry for over 15 years. And fun fact about Judie, when we started our the production channel and we started this podcast, one of the first day that I started tweeting and sort of doing Facebook posts, Judie just scooped it up right out the gate and started kind of tweeting back and forth and kind of starring our first post. And so I thought that was awesome. And so I kind of started going back and forth with her and just basically said, hey, Judie, we got to get you on the show. As soon as I found out you were stage manager, I was like, we got to get you on the production channel.
And here we are.
And here we are. So that's awesome. So Judie, thank you very much. I guess just kind of something we ask everybody, and I think it's perfect with you, particularly with your background out of Canada. I'm excited to kind of hear about this. How did you get into this industry, right? How did you actually sort of fall into the production industry?
Well, I think I literally did almost fall into it. I was working I'm a stage manager trained out of the Ryerson Theater School in Toronto. I graduated their technical production program. And so I did the traditional theater route, as many stage managers do, working in musicals and straight theater all over Canada, different places. And after I had my children, I have 2 teenagers, and after they were born, an 8-show-a-week schedule was a bit too much for my family life. My husband's in the golf industry and works a ton, so it didn't seem conducive to a family situation for me to keep up that schedule. But I was swinging in on a show in Toronto, relieving their stage management team. And,
no pun intended?
No pun intended, yeah. And I met another stage manager who had been doing more corporate work and asked me if I was interested. He asked me to help out on a very big car show for a manufacturer in Canada, and I did that and loved it from the get-go. So
really?
I was working as a deck stage manager, and it was a big show with about 75 cars, and I couldn't have enjoyed it more. It was seemed to be something I was really interested in, so I started with that, and I've been working with in that area since then. So about just over 15 years I've been doing corporate, and I love it. So,
well, how did you?
That's awesome.
How did you get your desire to go to this school?
Well, I had always enjoyed theater. Like when I was in high school, I did community theater. I started out acting, singing, dancing, as many kids do, but I do have that sort of organizational gene that many stage managers get and have, and that rolled itself right into stage management. I actually had a director who was looking over my shoulder. I was doing homework at rehearsal. I was probably about 15. And I was doing homework at rehearsal. I was in the show, and he looked at my notes and said, wow, you're pretty organized. Have you ever thought about being a stage manager? And up until then, I had not. So I ended up stage managing a very big production for him the next year, and immediately calling the show, actually. And I was 14 or 15 at the time. And I really enjoyed it. It was a grind the first time. It was a little scary, jumping into the deep end of the pool, as they say. But I really enjoyed it. And from then on, that was where I preferred to be.
So Judie, help for me, even personally. I've never done and worked in theater. I've done corporate shows on a theatrical stage, which I always thought that was kind of funny. But really help us and the audience understand the biggest differences between, calling a show or stage managing a show in theater versus corporate. And kind of, is it apples to oranges? Does it overlap a lot? Kind of talk about that.
I would say it overlaps a little. I think that the presentation aspect of it, that feeling of wanting to put out the best product possible, is definitely an area of overlap. I think the advantage that, and maybe sometimes disadvantage that theater has, is that, there's a long time to get it up and running. Generally speaking, there's a long rehearsal process. There's a long time to tech things and get things as perfect as possible. And then you settle into, to a routine. Things get tweaked, and, you're maintaining a standard and that kind of thing. everything. In corporate, as you guys know, it's get in, get her done, and get out, and get it done as high quality as we possibly can. But there's very much a throw everybody into the fire very quickly, and we all have to bring our A game from the moment we step into the building to the moment we leave, because there's no routine, there's no, you know exactly what's going to happen. And if you're anything like me, you work with a lot of different people on different projects, and so that's inherently the situation, is that you don't always know, well, who normally takes care of that, and who takes care of that, and who do I talk to about this, and who do I talk to about that. So all of those things that you have time to sort of feel out and know in a theatrical situation are very much boiled down in terms of time in corporate. And that I would say is the biggest difference. I think we're all still, my dad's got a barn and my mom will sew the costumes, and it's going to be a great show. I think we all still have that that inside of us, but corporate, it's just fast and dirty sometimes, and you just get it done.
My biggest experience with kind of moving in and out of a fixed venue, right? Like a theater, whether it's in New York City or Chicago, obviously union plays a big part depending on your venue. It seems like with corporate, you can come in and there's a lot of different variables, but at the end of the day, everyone's sort of approaching it with this idea of, we're bringing our stuff in over and above. It's just a shell, right? The sort of four walls and a floor in sort of a corporate ballroom. In a venue, there's all this, I have to work within the constraints of the actual venue, whether it's union labor or X amount of flywheels or bars or whatever it is, or how do I get, cameras from the third balcony down, but I can't go over. So it's like a little bit more of a difficult space. Can you speak to that? Is that kind of how you see it or have experienced it at all?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say there's a difference. I mean, I do some sporting events as well as a backstage manager. So I work in arenas, and often they're union spaces. So we do have that constraint as well. But I hear what you're saying, that we walk into an empty ballroom a lot of the times, and it's exactly four walls, and we put up exactly what we need, whereas working within the constraints of a space. But I think any space we go into, because I do a lot of auto work, the limitations sometimes in terms of venue often have to do with how many poles does it have, or does it have any. You can't drive cars in a big room that has a lot of poles, or we're working around the poles in order to make a stage big enough that we can drive a car onto or through, or store 25 cars backstage so that we can get them all on stage. And the set design has to reflect, okay, well, where can we store them, and which poles are we working around? So any venue you walk into, I think, has limitations, whether that's from a union perspective or a physical perspective or access. There's always something.
Man, you mentioned excuse me, I'm sorry, you mentioned theater, you've mentioned corporate, you've mentioned sports and the auto industry. You got a lot going on.
Yeah, I I do have a pretty varied background, which I actually enjoy. I mean, I never know what I'm going to get any place I go, which I actually really like about it. It's one of the things about corporate that I really enjoy. Sometimes the comfort of, I do the work with some of the same teams quite regularly, and always enjoy walking in and seeing, especially when it's someone I know who's going to, deliver high quality and has the same goals that I do. And I know their work and, their standards, which is always nice. And I'm very lucky. I work with some really, really great people. And I may not see them I may only see them once a year, but when I walk into the building, I'm always happy to see them, knowing that I'm going to get their best work, as they should expect the same from me.
It's funny that you say that, because that was going to be my follow-up, asking about how is it to walk into places where you have to lead this team, but yet you might not know anybody in the room. And you were saying how, you can appreciate when you do have those comfortable faces, but what is that feeling when you walk into a ballroom or to a theater and you don't know anybody, but you understand that it is your role to guide them through the entire show?
Well, it is an interesting feeling. I will tell you a funny story. And I walked into a small venue in Canada, and it was there was only one. I was being sent actually by a company I was working for, whose producer was not able to make it. They double booked her, and so they sent me in. I had only done one show for this producer before, and I walked in and introduced myself to the aging technician who was in charge of the venue. He was the only one there, and I introduced myself as the stage manager. And he looked up at me with this sort of quizzical look, and he said, "Really? We need one of those?" Which was an interesting reaction. I thought, you've got some pretty serious dignitaries coming in and some corporate presidents. So, yeah, they told me you did, so here I am. And then when I left and thanked him for his efforts over the 2 days that I was there, as it was a lot to be thrown at the two of us. I actually ended up running Keynote and PowerPoint. Thankfully, I was able to fill that role and editing and everything else. So thankfully, I was able to do that. And when I thanked him and left, and his review of the situation was best summed up by his quote, which I will. I wanted to put it on my LinkedIn profile. To be honest, he said, "Well, it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be." Was his reaction. So, that's probably one of the best reviews I think I've ever had. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So yeah, there's often the challenge of that. I just end up feeling my way around, and because different buildings, there's different people. Who do I have to talk to about access to this or that or whatever? And I just ask a lot of questions and smile at people. That's, that's my way.
Yeah, the friendly face. The friendly face can go anywhere. It'll take you across the board, universal.
Absolutely.
Now, you did mention sports, and I don't know if you were aware of this, but I spent 15 years with the Orlando Magic and 4 years before that with Florida State University in broadcast and shooting as a camera operator. So, I'm familiar.
I did know that about you. I've been listening to your podcast.
Chatter. I love it.
I like the chatter.
So what is your role in the sports world? What do you do exactly?
I'm Canadian, so I'm a hockey girl. So I have worked with some hockey events for sure, and I tend to, in those capacities, I'm more of a deck stage manager, but I actually skate, so I do my job while skating.
Now, what's deck stage manager?
What is a deck stage manager? Well, in Canada and in corporate, I find that most people or a lot of people are no longer using the term assistant stage manager. And for me, that makes a lot of sense because a calling, as you call it, a show caller and a stage manager who works, on the deck, on stage, backstage, whatever that stage looks like, whether it's an arena, whether it's a sheet of ice, whether it's a show site, whether it's an event. I've done tailgate parties. You can't really call it a stage, but it needs managing, and it's the space, right? It's the management of the space. So a lot of us have shifted to using the term deck stage manager because you're the person on the ground. And whether that's, getting your talent ready and cueing them or floor directing them if there's broadcast involved or, so in sports that tends to be, lining up the players and cueing the lineup or getting the talent, or if it's an anthem singer or a flag bearer or a bunch of kids you need skating on the ice, whatever that is, those people need management and cueing. And that's where that aspect of it comes in. So that's the role I tend to fill on those kinds of events, and I actually prefer it.
Okay.
So I just want to go back about 90 seconds and have you tell me a little bit more about how you perform your job professionally as a deck manager while skating at the exact same time, because that is a first. I've never heard that ever before.
Well, I when I first started working on hockey and realizing that I was doing my job in that kind of space, and I mean, anybody knows, I'm sure you've had the experience of working in a large ballroom and wished you'd brought a scooter with you in terms of covering that much ground.
Oh man, I bring it with me. I do bring it.
I actually wish I had one on many show sites, but I realized the first time I did a hockey event that I could get around a lot faster if I had my skates. And I happened to mention it to someone, and they said, "Well, you can skate?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm Canadian, and I have two kids who play hockey and a husband who coaches, and so yeah, hockey's not a dirty word in my house. So for sure, I skate." So I brought them the next time I did that event, and it made my job a lot easier.
Yeah. That's awesome. Hey, I actually got a question with you on the hockey end. I know Clem does some stuff with sport, has done stuff with sports, and then even show flow and different things with the Magic and places like that where they're using our software. They sometimes do these really epic projection down onto the light, down onto the ice. Have you been a part of any of that out there in Canada, or have you ever been a part of a show that did that in the hockey?
I actually have. The Toronto Maple Leafs have some pretty amazing. You can probably find them all on YouTube. They have some pretty amazing projection programs. Particularly, I don't know if you caught it. It's the 100th anniversary of the NHL and the 100th anniversary of the centennial celebration for the Toronto Maple Leafs this year, and they did an amazing presentation as part of their opening game. Centennial celebration as part of their opening game that featured some pretty incredible projection. So if you get a chance to have a look at that, they're doing some great work, as are many NHL teams using the ice as that projection surface. There's some incredible work being done in that area.
Well, it's such a perfect canvas because it's white. And then I guess I've always been curious, is that usually just a video that's rolling and then doesn't stop? Or are you also calling cues inside of the video for different things happening?
No, I mean, there are pieces to it and elements to it, but it's usually through Pandora, and there are cues to be called and a projection program to be built, because it generally has to be timed to whether that's skaters on the ice interacting with that projection, which often happens. And then sometimes it's just it's more of a straight video piece that's run. So
makes sense.
Yeah, I'm actually watching the video right now.
There you go. It's pretty good stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is really cool to see the way that one thing I've learned about projection, it is all about the content when it comes to mapping and stuff like this.
Absolutely.
I have done work where sometimes my grid looks better than the content, and I mean, it's pretty sad. It's like you've used all of this. I've done all this work, and this is it. This is all you're putting up.
Well, it's interesting working in auto as well. One of the things that with projection mapping, I'm seeing more of it in auto. Recently, I did a show where they had basically a car form that was white, and there was a screen behind it, and then they also projected onto the car itself. So it was as if the parts on the car were moving to demonstrate the different bits and pieces in the car. And it just blew me away every time I saw it. It was really incredible to see. So they're doing some great work, and I love to see different canvases like that being used, because I think it's an area that's definitely, one to explore. Makes things interesting, because otherwise corporate, I think you end up seeing a lot of the same, right? So when you see something a little different, a little out of the box, it's really nice to see that.
I was having a conversation with Michael Golding, who does a lot of TD and project management work in the auto industry side of things, and seeing some of the videos and some of the work that they've done overseas in other countries, just with the mapping and everything. It's like, it's just so exciting. When you talk about just the different canvases.
We're getting Clem all excited now talking about this.
I know.
You mentioned that your husband is a golfer. Now, is there a lot of golf in Canada, or how does his work schedule?
Well, I mean, it is a shorter season, but my husband is a pro at a private club, so he works right till Christmas, and then teaches winter golf school indoors, and then starts really their golf course opens early April usually. So I mean, we don't have a lot of snow in Toronto. I flew in from LA and saw just a dusting of white as I flew in, and we have not had a lot of snow this winter. So I find as the years go by, the season seems to get longer, which is a challenge, because he does work 7 days a week during the golf season, which is a lot.
And how does that work with your schedule and your kids' schedule?
You know what? My kids are teenagers now. I'm a 19-year-old. He's in his first year of college, and my younger son is 16. So they're older. They're used to the travel. When they were little, I didn't travel as much. I'm very lucky. My family is all very supportive and helpful. I didn't travel much at all during the golf season when they were little, but as they've gotten older, it's a little easier for me to go away and travel. And I don't, and one of the interesting things I've been finding listening to your podcast is, the discussion of work-life balance and how much that comes up, because as a mom, obviously that's something that is really close to my heart. And it was nice to hear, so many of your interviewees talking about exactly the same thing. So I don't feel alone in that struggle,
Yeah. And I feel like that is, something that gets overlooked, and we're constantly chasing a job or chasing, a check or something, where, it's something that isn't discussed. And that's kind of a priority of mine, to make sure that we are all keeping that on the forefront of our mind as we're looking at opportunities and jobs and career projection, stuff like that.
Absolutely. Like, I don't think, I could do what I do if I was doing it every single day of the month. And I mean, we all know people who go from show to show to show to show, and it's quite a grind. And, I couldn't do that. It wouldn't give me time to do, like, my boys both have played, travel hockey all growing up. My younger son is still playing, travel high level baseball, and I want to be there to see them enjoy those things. And for me, that's a huge quality of life thing. My husband's still coaches a younger, group of kids, and I manage that hockey team. And so that's something that I really love to do because the kids benefit from that. And one of the things I hate about traveling is when I'm missing games. So I don't like that. I get lots of updates from my hockey moms and I keep track of what's going on at home. And for me, that's a big part of how I design my schedule. If something big's happening with my kids, I know that if my kid's traveling for a week playing baseball in Florida, I'm definitely not working that week because I want to be there and see them enjoy those things. 'Cause they're only young for a little while. I know you have kids, Clem, so you understand that.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it's interesting that you even have time to be able to manage something like a hockey team. I feel like for me, that was the stuff I could never do when I was traveling all the time. And so when I took my sabbatical and then really inevitably just kind of turned and started show flow, the first stuff I did was basically go join a softball team, go get replugged into my church, go get back into my community because that was the stuff I couldn't find a regular rhythm on.
Absolutely.
So I guess with you, Judie, how are you? How much are you traveling? And then when you do travel or do shows, do you ever do them in your town? Like for me, I'm in Orlando, so when I was working shows, there was a good amount of work that was just basically driving to the office that day and coming back, even though it's a ballroom. For you, are you basically always coming stateside, or do you? No,
I do a lot in Toronto. Okay. Now, I live just outside of the city, so depending on what the show schedule can be like. I did an event a few weeks ago where I checked into the hotel on the Sunday morning. I actually did not leave the building until Friday. So get outside with those crazy schedules. So sometimes I will be working in Toronto and not leave the building. It's that. So I do stay, even though I'm living just outside the city. But I do travel as well. I have 2 events, for example, this month. One's in Toronto and one is later in the month. I'm going to Pittsburgh for a week. So I try to stick. If I can do 1 or 2 a month, that makes me feel a good balance. There's times of the year, as you well know, that are busier than others for corporate, especially when you're talking about something like auto. It has obviously busier times of the year. So I tend to stick to, that rhythm. And then I do tend to work a little less in the summer, and obviously things taper off at Christmas time. You guys probably find the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not quite as busy.
Now you just mentioned rhythm. So when we're on the road, we're working and we have our road family. When we're home, we're trying to spend time with our family. But how do you incorporate your friends in that relationship to maintain that?
Well, I think there's an advantage to having friends who understand what you do. My family's very good because my family still, my parents do community theater. They understand the demands of the schedule of that. And both of my sisters, even though they don't work in that area, both have done that as well when they were younger. So they understand what I do and understand that I do sometimes go down the rabbit hole. And they may not hear from me. And even my own, my family in my house, my husband and my kids, they know sometimes that there are times when I just can't, there's just no way I can, be in touch as often as maybe they'd like. Although they're teenage boys, right? I'm not cool right now, so it doesn't much matter. I don't hear from them as often anyway. So unless I get a text now and then, but they really understand because there is a flow to that where there's times where I'm just not as connected. And then, I catch up when I go home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now you mentioned your other family members. You said your mom and your sister are all in theater as well.
Well, my mother and my father both do community theater. My mom's a director, and my dad's a producer, stage manager type. So we actually started doing that, my sisters and I, before my parents got involved. I think it was kind of, if you can't beat them, join them sort of a thing. And so my family's still doing community theater, which they love and keeps them busy and connected with their friends. And like I said, the advantage is they understand when I talk about my shows, they don't look at me like I'm speaking another language.
Yeah, that's got to be huge because I wonder, it's a big thing with athletes when they have kids, or anybody, I guess, that generation of passing on that knowledge on that next level. I was just wondering how it is affected by people in our industry, just passing on that generational knowledge and understanding.
Well, I'm really lucky. I still work with the Ryerson Theater School from time to time. I've done a couple of events with them, fundraising events, and I've met some amazing stage managers there. And the program that I graduated from was a diploma program at the time, but it's now a degree. And so I've mentored a couple of students through their thesis programs there. And so I've met some great young stage management students, and I've actually brought them in to do work with me on some of my corporate events, which has been amazing because
that's cool.
Yeah, it is, because to me it makes it feel like it's not a dying art. I think good stage management, good people management is an art, and I feel strongly about that. And for me, it's a lot about the people. Great show callers definitely is an art, but working directly with people the way we do is something that I value very highly. And so when I see young stage managers coming up who are doing that and seeing that and also value that, it makes me feel like there is some hope for our art, as it were.
Right, right. And I'm sorry, quick plug. Anybody interested in getting some projection coaching? I do offer services, so reach out to me on Facebook. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Shameless promotion. Go for it.
Well, and we were just talking about what you were saying there with Melissa last week, or in our last episode that we recorded, where she was just talking about how, this industry is sort of kind of in its own little bubble, right? And it doesn't get the limelight that other sort of industries would get, whether it's software development or legal or law or whatever it is. And so a lot of the knowledge is transferred from generation to generation or from person to person, but it's like this direct transfer of knowledge as opposed to this institutional transfer of knowledge.
Well, I think corporate is definitely like that because it's outside the box. I mean, stage management is something that people tend to think of as a theatrical, job. And so transferring that skill to corporate, and you probably find the same thing. A lot of times it might be a producer. They'll say, the producer called the show last year, but realized it was too much work on top of everything else they were doing. So I'll often step into a show and call it where last year, or in previous years, a producer has done it. But it really is something that you need to focus on. And, the job is different for each client, I find. Sometimes there's a creative element involved where you're trying to talk everybody through how they want the award segments to go or how best to get 25 dancers on stage and off stage. And, if you don't have a deck stage manager and you're the only person in a stage management role on that event, that becomes part of it as well. So, there's all of those extra demands that if you don't understand that it is a fluid kind of job description, it's a bit of a shocker walking in. You want me to do what?
So kind of with our last question here, do you have any good story of either disaster or just like a cool execution, something you guys really pulled off in an amazing kind of production way? Do you have any good stories to share?
I have a few, actually. I made some notes because, these are the fun things. These are the things I like to tell around the family dinner table, makes them laugh. So, I was doing a corporate event a few weeks ago, and it was one of those show after show after show where there was a plenary session and then a keynote speaker and then a 15-minute break and another different show. And so we did not have a chance to rehearse as many of the elements of it as we wanted. And so the client had decided to end their plenary session and sort of introduce their evening event with a little sort of fanfare, and they brought out a t-shirt cannon, which I had asked right.
I already know where this is going.
You already know. So I said to them, so you've tested the t-shirt cannon, right? And they said, oh no, but they told us it's going to be fine, which, those kinds of words are never ones you want to hear. So out come the volunteers with the t-shirt cannon at the end of the show. So the first thing they hit, Clem, which will probably make you turn you over in your grave, was the projector, of course.
Oh, gosh.
The front projector. And then they hit the cameraman at the back of the room. And then they hit a woman standing there who was texting on her phone and not paying attention. They hit her right in the chest.
Man. Of course.
And then they hit me.
Straight to the chest. Oh,
and then they hit me at the back of the room. So
were they aiming, or is this
no?
just like
she was actually
fire?
trying not to aim at anything, but in the process, she managed to.
I'm not sure if that's a gun error or operator error.
Well, it's difficult because you can't shoot up because you'll hit a fixture. You can't shoot too low down because you'll hit somebody, and so you're in the middle. And then the power was too high, and that's why it's hitting the back of the room.
Well, hence my question about did you test it? Because clearly it was, we had more firepower than was required for the size of the ballroom.
Right. Oh my gosh.
So that was a good one.
Crazy.
So, and then the other one I was going to tell you was would have been one of my very first corporate shows, and it was an auto show, and the stage was a large T shape. And the sort of lower part of the T was a big ramp that the cars were coming up. So they decided to start the show with sort of a march up of the talent and the executives and the president and whatnot marching up onto the stage, which the producer decided I had to lead with a flag. I was deck stage managing, which did not make me happy. Anytime I have to make an appearance never makes me happy, but unfortunately it does happen quite often. You know, somebody's mic falls off or they need water or whatever, and I have to walk out. I try to do it as surreptitiously as possible. But anyway, so I had to lead this parade onto the stage. So as we lead the parade up and everybody else, and then we get up to the top of the T and everybody's heading backstage, the way the exit stairs were placed on the top part of the T didn't cover the entire distance from across the stage. And the president was so busy waving at everyone as he walked off. He was just about to walk off the edge of the stage and an 8-foot drop. So I ran through, as I escorted everybody up, I ran through a group of about 20 people and grabbed this gentleman, probably more roughly than he would have liked, by the arm and guided him off the stairs literally just before he was about to step off the edge of the stage.
Oh, goodness.
So that was sort of my introduction to into the X factor, if you will, about corporate, in terms of those things that you don't always get a chance to rehearse, but you sometimes have to just, as we say, follow the puck. And fix.
Yes.
As
I
always
love
say
it.
to people, I say, we're just following the puck, guys. We're just following the puck.
Well, you'll love this. You'll love that about our interview with Melissa that we just had, where it's just like with sports, there's no rehearsal. You just
absolutely
you just do it. You just get in and you do it.
That's right. That's right. Which is actually, I mean, it's good and bad. And I am finding, and maybe you are too, Clem, that with as the money crunches, sometimes so does the rehearsal time. And there are definitely things that the shift, it tends to be more from proactive to reactive, which I don't always love. I mean, there's a safety factor involved, which if you can at least get those things done that have a higher risk of falling apart, it makes me a little happier. But there is definitely a shift I'm finding in that from proactive to reactive, and we are a lot of the time just following the puck and hoping for the best and doing our best to make it look good along the way.
There we go.
Well, Judie, thank you so much. This has been awesome, and I love the blend with your experience, everything from corporate to theater to sports. That's like that to me when we're talking with people who have kind of touched different parts of the industry. I feel like they have this more holistic, rounded view. You know, sometimes you do shows with a television broadcast director or producer, and they're doing a corporate, and they seem entirely out of place. But I can just kind of tell from talking to you, you've got this kind of holistic view of kind of how the whole industry comes together, the nuances of each. But that's pretty cool. So thank you so much for joining us today, Judie.
Well, thanks for having me. Like I said, I'm a fan of the chatter, so I'll keep listening too. So.
Well, it's taking off.
Chatter.
Chatter.
Well, everybody, thanks again for tuning in. This is what we're doing. We're trying to bring the latest and greatest in terms of stories that are going on around the industry. If you know of anybody that has stories just like Judie's, please have them reach out directly to Clem or I, or hit us up on productionchannel.com, on Twitter, on Facebook. We're everywhere. But with that, we're going to wrap today. Clem, my friend, thank you.
Thank you, buddy. It's been it is a great ride, and I'm enjoying it.
That's right. Judie, thank you. And we will tune in next week again on the production channel.
Chatter.